Hello everyone, my name is Matt Gillick with BookTrib.com and thank you all for joining us for 15 minutes with Marguerite Elisofon. Marguerite Elisofon is the author of My Picture Perfect Family, What Happens When One Twin Has Autism, and she has been featured in Time Magazine, New York Metro Parents, Autism Parenting magazines, as well as being featured on News 8 in Connecticut on a local news station, and we are very happy that she's here to join us to talk about her book. Thanks so much for joining us, Marguerite.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, my first question to you would be, who or what inspired you to write My Picture Perfect Family?
My daughter Samantha inspired me over many, many years. I learned so much from raising her and her twin brother Matthew, and my realization that it was a very unusual family that I had, both because I had twins, because I had a daughter who turned out to be on the autistic spectrum among all the other sub-labels she was given, and what that was like to try to take care of two very different children who were supposed to be, at least chronologically and developmentally, more or less at the same level.
It's very interesting. And about the whole process of writing the book, it has a lot of important events throughout your life, especially the first 23 years of how your picture perfect family came to grow over the years, and they're described in such minute detail with almost every little thing mentioned. So how were you able to recall so much over such a long period of time?
Well, I wrote about the memories that were the most vivid and that I thought would be the most powerful for a reader to encounter. And because those memories were so vivid for me, I remembered them in great detail, and I'm an extremely visual person. So I remember colors, I remember details, I remember the weather. Do I remember what I ate last, 2 weeks ago? No. But if it was really something meaningful to me, or moving to me, or embarrassing, I remember it. Like, I have a photographic memory. In fact, I have friends that used to joke that I could glance at a list of Latin words and go into the quiz and, boom, and then 10 minutes later I wouldn't remember it. But with things that are really, I want to say, either near or dear to my heart or that moved me in some extreme way, I remember, but that's not to say that I always remember. I wrote a book about what I thought would be what was memorable and vivid to me, and what I thought readers might resonate with those kinds of stories.
They certainly do resonate. I particularly love the part where your daughter Samantha says when she took on vacation, she really wanted a cup of soda, but you said no, and she was so fuming angry that she grabbed someone else's soda, and she said, "You always loved sharing so much." I found that to be so relatable.
Well, yes, but it didn't quite go like that, because I always give her that's not the way the story went. The way the story went was we had lunch, we had soda, we went to the beach, she had her two sodas that we always let her have just for peace.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that food should not be a battleground. There are too many other ones when you have young children, and especially one on the spectrum. So we were on the beach, and it never occurred to me in 100 years that, she might still want soda. But, I was reading my book, and I thought she was maybe crocheting or doing something else. And Matthew said to me, Matthew, her brother, said, "Mom, look what Samantha's doing." And, he'd run over and he tried to get her to stop drinking out of someone else's soda. So there wasn't even a connection between, I want soda, I'm going to go steal someone else's, mom said no to me. It didn't go like that. It was like, oh, I see someone over there has some soda. I think I want it. I think I'm going to go take it. So it was like I couldn't have even, I had no idea that would ever enter her head as something that she might do.
I just love that part. So about writing the book again, what did you enjoy most about the process of writing this memoir?
Well, it made me, it sort of gave meaning to my life, and I thought that maybe that other people going on the same or similar kinds of journeys would not feel so alone as I did during mine. Because I did it, I wrote the, I mean, I raised my children at a time when there was no internet, there were no support groups. Autism Speaks, I don't think, happened until my kids were somewhere in their teens. And I felt very isolated because, there weren't many kids like my daughter around. And, it was hard to bond with other moms. And then when I went to my son's school, and if I had my daughter with me and she was melting down, that it wasn't really conducive to my having a conversation either. And so I sort of felt like I was reaching out into the world and kind of trying to be someone else's friend who might be feeling like I did, even though there are support groups now.
So on the flip side of that, what was the hardest part about writing this memoir?
Going back to how I felt, recreating those feelings in myself, remembering in detail just how sad or embarrassed or frustrated or despondent that I was at those times, at certain times, just how helpless and hopeless it felt to me at those times. In order to write about it, you sort of have to go back to that place if you want to recreate it for your readers.
Now, are there any activists or advocates for the ASD community or within the ASD community whom you especially admire, and did you have them in mind while you were writing this?
Well, there are people I admire, but I didn't have any of them in mind when I wrote the book. I wrote the book purely in my own little bubble about my own life, but how it was touched or not touched by others outside of it. And remember, there were not so many people talking about autism when my kids were 10, say. But there are now, because instead of 1 out of 150, it's now 1 out of 68. So, what was the rest of the question?
Who are those people, like activists?
The activists. I really enjoy John Robeson. I've read several of his books. I've seen him speak at 2 autism conferences, and I was mesmerized. I mean, I just thought he was amazing. I've also heard Leanne Holiday speak, and these 2 people, they're quirky, they're different, but they're amazing, and they're very, very smart. The thing that I take away from it, though, is although they're wonderful advocates for people on the spectrum, they're really speaking to the top of the spectrum. Seems to me like there's a tremendous number of people out there that are quite talented and or brilliant who have Asperger's syndrome. And these people are, I think, amongst the many who say, neurodiversity, and I believe in neurodiversity too, but it doesn't speak to the lower functioning. I know that's maybe an un-PC word, but I don't know, can't think of another one at the moment. But for those children who are nonverbal, who are self-injurious, or who wander off, I'm not sure those people have a spokesperson, or actually some of those people have spokespeople too. I mean, not John Elder Robeson. Who was it that we had? The horse boy person.
Rupert Isaacson.
Thank you. Rupert Isaacson, I think, had a son who was functioning at a lower level, and I think he's an excellent spokesperson as well. But what I find a dearth of are spokespeople for those that are more in the middle or upper middle, like my daughter might be, or, as her therapist said to me about a week ago, you've made her high functioning. I don't know that she necessarily started out that way, but because of her personality and her motivation, she made herself. I said to him, I didn't do it. She did it. We did it together,
That's awesome. So with this incredibly powerful memoir where you chronicle nearly a quarter century of your family's life, with your daughter creating so many great strides moving forward, what would you like to see My Picture Perfect Family accomplish, or hope or begin to accomplish?
Well, as I started out saying, I'd like to see it help other people who are starting on the journey. Personally, I would like it to help my daughter. I would like people in the world to start to see Samantha and others like her as people that should be included. They should have employment opportunities. They should have the ability to, be in theater, not just, check out in the grocery line or do some clerical position, but, if they're like my daughter or whatever their talents happen to be. My daughter's happens to be singing and acting and entertaining, and, despite her disabilities, I want to see her have a chance. I want to see others like her have a chance. I want to see doors start to open, not just for the children, but for the young adults. And right now, there's very, very little out there for the children, for the young adults who either graduate high school or college. It's dismal.
It's very noble. I admire you for that. So I guess my last question would be, are you thinking about any future projects or any future books that you would like to write about, possibly giving readers an update of how your family has grown?
Sure. I think that it would be interesting for people to know maybe what my kids are doing or not doing now, since, I actually put it in the book, but, my son is a screenwriter and my daughter has been an actress and singer. So I think that would be interesting. Also, to share what I've learned, like a little bit more of a how-to book, little lighter, more like my blogs. I would probably take stuff out of there and reorganize it and make it into something that people could use, depending on the age of their child, that would have tips on how to better manage their lives. Mm-hmm. Hopefully learn from some of my mistakes and learn from some of the things that maybe I did right. So those are my thoughts on that. And as far as that goes, and I've also decided to do a consulting business for families who are, have either read my book or, read my blog and decide they'd like my help with their child or my opinion, or in some ways just someone to hold their hand even as they go through the process. It's while they second guess themselves, which many of us do. So that's called Ask an Autism Mom.
And if anyone would like any more information about her blog or Marguerite's consulting business, we'll provide a link at the bottom, but it's called MargueriteElisofon.com, and her blog is called A Never Empty Nest. You can find that on MargueriteElisofon.com, and her consulting business is called Ask an Autism Mom. So we'll provide a link for that at the bottom. And unfortunately, we are actually out of time, but I'd like to say, everyone, make sure to get a copy of My Picture Perfect Family by Marguerite Elisofon. And I would just like to thank her again for joining us. Thank you so much, Marguerite.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a nice day.